and welcome to Australia's first Let's Talk Tiny Houses podcast. My name is Christine, and ever since laying eyes on my first tiny house, I wanted to know more about the movement, the lifestyle, the communities, and most of all, how I can go tiny. While on my tiny journey, gathering information and meeting amazing like-minded people, I started thinking, apart from my business, how could I contribute back to the movement? Then I was introduced to podcasting, and that was my light bulb moment. I'm so thrilled that through this podcast, I am able to bring you an amazing cast of co-hosts who all bring their own unique skills, knowledge, and advice to each episode. All of us are extremely passionate about the tiny house movement and want to share our experience, expertise, and enthusiasm with our listeners. Each week we will bring you a special guest interview or particular hot topic discussion that relates to tiny living for your listening pleasure. Okay, let's jump in and find out who we have with us this week. Patti and I have gone on a little road trip today. So how are you, Patti?
Loving a road trip. Always love a road trip.
Yes. So we've come all the way up to Eudlo to meet with Dean from Eudlo Lifebubbles Friends. And we've just had a really... How long do you reckon we're walking for?
Half an hour.
Half hour, 40 minutes, yeah. Through the property, and we went all the way down to the little gully and the little dry waterbed down there. And we ventured through the ferns.
Took the leap of faith.
Yes, so the leap of faith. Yes, people will be able to see pictures of that on the Facebook page. But introduce
a bit of geological history on the way.
Geological history, yes, and finding out all about the property. So it's been lovely. So welcome, Dean.
Thank you.
And thank you for having Patti and I and taking your time
pleasure.
to show us the property. It's so lovely. So yourself and I met a few weeks ago at the Eco Village conference up at Maleny. And so it was lovely meeting you, and you walked me to my car that night because it was night and I'd parked in a little bit of a scary...
She was sure there were snakes going to eat her on the way.
No. So you kindly said that I could come and visit the property and Patti and I can come and investigate and see what's going on. Let's have a little chat about how everyone's week has been. So you've had a busy week. Patti's had a busy week.
I have, yes. Always busy.
So you've moved into a new establishment with your work.
I have. I've got a new workplace. Yeah. Lots more positivity and, lots more fun.
Yeah.
So, looking forward to embracing that.
And you've got, people might be able to hear, you've got a little bit of laryngitis, but you're...
Just a little. It's coming back.
Yes.
Sorry about that, folks. My voice is coming back.
You sound great, Patti. And Dean's been working on the property. When we arrived, you were on the Bobcat.
Yes.
Yeah.
So just doing a bit of drainage work. We have always a bit of an adventure, but we had a very rare winter thunderstorm here where we had hail and lightning struck the power board, blew up the meters and the power board, and we had to replace all of that. And as well as that, we had 100 mil in about 2 hours. So we had lots of washouts and had to do a bit of drainage work after that.
Bit of rock slides and boulder moves too,
We've taken some pictures of that to show everyone. So a little bit of rearranging and new landscaping due down there.
Yes.
Yeah. For listeners who aren't aware of the property and yourself, could you give us a little bit of background on Dean and how you came to be living tiny and having the Eco Village?
Okay, well, I started with the idea of tiny, and mine's not so much just tiny as underground. So I really liked the idea of living subterranean. And so even as a kid, I made these little cubby houses. The first one was in a wombat burrow, and so this is in Tasmania. And then the second one was Dad had, with his excavator, had dug a trench to get some sand out, and I put sheets of corrugated iron over it and covered it over with dirt and fern fronds, and then made a little cubby house in under the ground. And so that was my... and I've always had this view to being able to live underground. So about, 20 years ago, I visited Cappadocia in Turkey and saw all the underground houses and churches and everything over there, including the underground city at Derinkuyu. So there's a very ancient city there that's about 5,000 years old. So we're talking a long time ago. People built these underground cities in order to escape the Hittites.
Are they
you
inhabited?
could actually live in them. They were actually completely unknown up until 1965, I think it was. They were rediscovered. So people had forgotten that these things even existed there. And then someone was cleaning out, and then they found these shafts. And it turns out they were actually really cleverly made. They had a compost shaft where all the waste and wastewater went. They separated from that. They had a water shaft where you could get your water from the well, so right down to the aquifer. And then they had a air vent shaft, so the air would, and also for light, so it would let light in, and an air ventilation shaft. And it's all in this volcanic soft rock that's fairly easy to dig. And these things went down there's equivalent of an 8-story building. So there's lots that goes really deep, and there's all these little shafts and tunnels and people living in little things, usually opening up into one of these big deep shafts where they can get light and so on. But yeah, it was they think it was primarily designed to escape the marauding Hittites. But I think it was more than that. I think they actually liked living in a cool place underground, and they're stable, like they're still there after 5,000 years. And absolutely fantastic concept. So I was really inspired and came back and built myself a little earth-sheltered ferro cement dome, which I rammed earth around and lived in for 16 years.
Wow.
And
so the ones in Turkey, did you go into them?
Yes, yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So did you go
you can live in them. There's hotels and houses and churches.
Wow.
And,
Oh, we'll have to look at this.
If you have a look up Cappadocia on, do a
Google
search, and you'll find heaps on Cappadocia, and it's a gorgeous place.
Wow.
And the people were super friendly, and
that's brilliant.
We went in autumn, and there were beautiful autumn colours and dried apricots everywhere, and people eating apricot kernels, and it was just a really fun trip.
That's awesome. So sorry, I interrupted you. So you came back and
built my own little version, and because we lived in a basalt area, I had to make a ferro cement dome because I didn't have this lovely soft volcanic rock that you can carve out with a pick and shovel. So I made a really strong shell out of chicken wire and a high strength concrete, and then so mixed that together and made a shell that's super strong. And then I had a slab that I put that on, and then I rammed earth around it to give it the thermal stability, because that's one of the nice things about living underground is the temperature doesn't change much. So the average annual temperature of rock in this area is about 23 degrees. And so it's a really nice stable temperature to live in. So it's like a perfect fit if you can tunnel into the ground and have a structure that's got a high thermal mass, then it means you don't get big swings between summer and winter.
That's right. Yeah, you can just watch the seasons change.
Yeah. So that's what the little meditation cave that you saw out the back there, that's not complete yet, but that's the idea of that, was just to get in and have it so that it's always stable.
Yeah.
Because it gets quite hot here. We've had 44 degree days and quite humid during summer, so it can get very hot. And having a place there that's a refuge from that oppressive heat is really lovely.
Perfect.
Because it stays at about that 23, 25 degrees.
Yeah. Oh, that's brilliant. So you lived in the previous one
So
for about 16 years?
I lived there for 16 years until I had to move. It wasn't, I'd built it on someone else's property, my ex's property. And so, it was a matter of just moving from there. And it was sad to move, but life goes on, nothing stays the same. And when I looked for a new property, I looked for a place that had sandstone outcrops on it that I could burrow into. And so this place was perfect because it's got some really beautiful sandstone outcrops that look out over the northern view and out over the hinterland of the Sunshine Coast.
The view from your deck is just gorgeous.
Isn't it?
Stunning.
Beautiful.
I love the big gum trees too.
Isn't it?
They're just gorgeous.
Yeah.
So that was the idea, is to make several of these, what I call life bubbles. The concept of a life bubble is to make a place that's both your habitat and your shelter. So I've neglected to mention that the one I had in Mullaney, I put a big greenhouse on after a few years, and I could afford it. I made an 18-metre diameter, so quite a large dome that was made out of plastic as like a greenhouse.
Yes.
And so it was a combination then of the underground for the cool conditions and a greenhouse for growing all the plant foods.
I think I've seen a picture of that on maybe the Facebook page.
Yeah, I've got some pictures there. And it was gorgeous, and the plants just grew like mad. It was like I had the best pawpaws around.
Wow.
Bananas, everything just grew like crazy in there.
Yeah, and you've got 2 children.
Yes.
So how
3.
did? Oh, 3.
Yes.
Oh,
Another one grew in the green.
Yeah. Wow. It's a very good greenhouse. So how did they find living underground?
Oh, they loved it.
They loved it.
Like there was a curious thing because they were both terrible sleepers and then in desperation, my ex said, can you just take the kids? I just need a night's sleep. So I took, this was first with my eldest son, Ziggy, and so from about 6 months on, he came down and slept in the fairy house with me, and he would sleep straight through the whole lot, not a single glitch.
Wow.
It was incredible.
Yeah.
So I'd give them their little bottles. I'd tuck them under my arm and warm up the bottle and give them in the night. So I had all this express milk that I could feed. So I had both of them there from when they were tiny, and they just got so used to it. They loved it.
That's awesome.
But it's kind of got a calming. Because of the shape. It's kind of this dome shape. So it's like a womb-like shape anyway, and it's this really calm, sheltered place that it's quieter because you're underground, and the kids just loved it, and so did I. I'd always sleep, so deeply when I slept. That was
It's reminding me of like those float tanks.
Oh, well, yeah, kind of.
It's similar.
Not so much floating, but you're in a calm space where it's quiet and still, and there's like a feeling of strength and shelter around you that you're safe.
Yeah.
So it's like this natural feeling of. I'm sure that's why cave people went into caves, because it felt safer. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that's gorgeous.
Yeah.
So then you've moved to this property about 4 years ago?
That's correct, yeah.
And so was it someone's home previous?
Yeah,
or were they doing...
No, well, I bought a place. I looked at it initially just trying to get somewhere cheap, but by the time I got somewhere with just land or a shed, it was still, quite expensive, and then I'd still have to be paying it off, because I couldn't afford to buy anything outright. So I actually decided it's probably going to be more economical to buy an established house that's got more rooms in it. So this place originally had 3 bedrooms, and I've made an extra, so I've now got 4 bedrooms, and building in more underneath. So it's made it more economical because the people who stay here now pay off the mortgage. So it gave me an opportunity to live in a extended family situation. I call it our intentional family.
And that's great. Yeah.
And everyone shares the common resources. So like, what's the point of everyone having a bathroom and a laundry and they're only used a fraction of the time. So the washing machine is enough, like there's now 10 people here. Yeah. So we got 10 people sharing a washing machine and 10 people sharing a kitchen, and so it just makes much better use of limited resources. It's, in my view, it's like extending the concept of a tiny house to we only really need a tiny room, and then you can share a common space and a beautiful deck, and so it gives more amenity.
That's right.
Than if you're in, so it's similar concept of using less resources per person, sharing, resources sensibly, and we've sorted out. Most people think, I wouldn't want to do that because there's always conflict in a community situation, like who. They're using more power, or they're using more water, or they're using more
peanut butter.
All of those issues, they're all actually really easy to solve if you just have a common ground rules when people come. And so, and that's evolved over the 4 years, so that we've now got what I think is probably. I think it's the best constitution that I've seen.
Yeah,
we've worked on it. We've pulled bits from. The Charter of Human Rights. We've pulled bits from other constitutions. We've pulled bits from standard company, not-for-profit constitutions, and the main one that we used as a framework was Community Land Trust Constitution, and so between all of those, bringing in the rights and responsibilities like the human rights, so that for a start, I think it eliminates people who are not community-minded, because if you come in knowing that you've got a sign to say, yeah, look, I agree to live in this place by the Constitution, then that means, that there's no scope for people being rude or disrespectful to each other, or discriminating on the basis of their gender or their sexuality or their race or whatever. All of that's kind of eliminated by them saying, no, we agree to abide by the Constitution.
Yeah.
So you're not going to get people here who are going to be, abusive or disrespectful, or, it just doesn't happen, because we'd pull anyone up if they started,
right.
Using drugs or whatever. Then hang on, that's not in the Constitution. We don't, that if that's your thing, then this is not for you.
That's right. So how would people find, if a room became available, how would people know about it?
It's always been by word of mouth. So we've never had, we've literally got every available space used at the moment, because, people love it so much that, so for example, Cindy moved in, and then she said to a cousin, "Oh, you've got to come here. It's fantastic." So they moved in, and then they had friends. So and Jimmy came, and then he said, "Oh, Bert, you've got to come," and so Bert came, and he don't. So that's the way it just grows. People are attracted to a friendly bunch of like-minded people when it comes down to it.
So when someone approaches you who
Yes.
would like to live here, is it a group decision?
It is. We all
so everyone
discuss it.
sits there. Oh, great.
Yeah. So, for example, we recently had a woman wanted to come with her son, but she's got 2 dogs, and because we've already got mumbo jumbos here, and she doesn't really get on with other big dogs. We thought, we all discussed it, and they said, no, it's not going to work,
that's good.
because we'll just have conflict there between the... So everyone, it was just a consensus. There was no big deal. We just said, it's not as if we're particularly against having pets, but in this
just
case,
didn't suit at
there
the
were
time.
just too many, and it wouldn't have worked, so...
So for people who they're a good fit, when they're signing the Constitution, which is
we actually
tendency...
as well as the Constitution, we actually have a expression of interest form for people who are interested to fill out, and that just goes through all of the things in a really practical way of these are the expectations. So if you're going to come, these are the available rooms, if there are any. or you can put in an expression of interest. Well, when that room becomes available, I'm interested in moving in. But it's we have a requirement for 5 hours of voluntary work contribution each per person, and we didn't used to have that. And so what it tends to happen in a situation where there's no expectation up front is people come in thinking, oh, this is great, I can, and you can get a situation where people just cruise along and don't actually contribute.
Take advantage of that.
And so it's foreseeable. It's almost inevitable. You just make sure that people are clear on what the expectation is, and then there's no bad blood.
That's right.
Another thing is that we say, there's at least one family meal where everyone gets together and has a communal meal every week. And as it's turned out, that's turned into there's a communal meal here every night.
Yeah, you were saying the group.
And it's just a really functional and fun group at the moment.
Yeah.
And so we'll have a meal, and then there's several musicians, and we'll grab the banjo, grab the ukulele, and so everyone just gets around and spontaneously starts. And we've deliberately made it into a welcoming place. So, for example, about 3 weeks ago, we invited a friend of my partner Monique's up, who was he's an Afghan refugee, and so he came along, and this was his first time out of detention centre for a whole day, and he was blown away. He filmed the whole. We all just spontaneously started playing music that night, and he joined in, and it was just he kept writing to me, oh, it was so much fun, I'd like to come again. I've said, yeah, sure, come again, we'll let you know when there's something, or you let us know when you'd like to come for another break.
Oh,
so that sort of welcoming feeling is what that's part of the ethos of what we've set up.
Yeah.
But then, as well as that, as a functional community, there's always work to do beyond that 5 hours of voluntary, what we call, it's like a community contribution where everyone just contributes to build the community.
Is that 5 hours a week?
Yes.
Yeah.
So that 5 hours a week is really very helpful because it does a lot of the maintenance and, common things. But then there's other work like building in down below and things like this. So there's extra work on top of that actually adds value to the property. So what we do there is we have there's the governance structure is set up as it's a trust with a not-for-profit company under it, and as a co-trustee, and then there's also a for-profit proprietary limited company where the people who have contributed become shareholders. And that contribution can be either in cash, they might put cash in, or they might actually just work, so they might not have any cash to put in, but they are prepared to actually work. And we have an egalitarian work set up where everyone's paid the same amount, and whatever work you do on that basis beyond the 5 hours, that's agreed work. So we all get together and say, well, what's our next priority? And then people who work on that priority get paid, and they get paid in shares in the company. So, which means that they build their equity in this whole health project.
Wow, what a great episode. I would like to thank you for listening, and I really hope you enjoyed this week's discussion. I would like to now invite you over to our exclusive Facebook group, where you as our listeners will be able to interact with us, each other, see photos and additional extras that accompany each episode, and be the first to know what we have coming up. If there is a particular topic you would like to hear more about, or someone you think we need to interview, please drop us a line at letstalktinyhouses@gmail.com or via our Facebook group. You can find this podcast series on iTunes, Spotify, or your favourite podcast app. And while you're there, please show your love by giving us a rating. Hopefully it's 5 stars. Our show notes will be available on Podbean, along with any podcast corrections and amendments. The Let's Talk Tiny Houses podcast is brought to you by myself, Christine Murphy, and my business, OCD, Organising, Cleaning and Decluttering Specialist, which can be found on Facebook or through my website, ocdpro.com.au. I would like to thank all my co-hosts for their amazing contributions, and Joanne Helder for editing all our audio and making us sound so fabulous. Until next week, please take care and enjoy yourself.